Hey YouTube, I am at the field with my Tower Hobbies Sport 60 and I just completed the maiden. That video will be available on the website as well. So this is the build review, and I thought I'd spend a little bit of time just talking about the airplane, what I liked, what I didn't like, and hopefully you can use the information making your own decisions, or if you are interested in a plane like this, hopefully the information I provide will help you plan ahead so your build goes nice and smooth. So with that said, I want to get in. I've been accused, like on the Dynam planes, of not liking Dynam planes, and I think it's because I provide a little bit of a critical view on the things they do wrong, but I also provide some feedback on what they do right. So I think on this video I'm going to start with the things I didn't like first, and I'm going to get that out of the way, and then I'm going to talk about the things I do like. And just to be clear, the things I like about this plane far outweigh the things I don't like about it. So it's a neat airplane, and I am very happy to have it in my hangar, and I fully expect this plane will be at the field with me quite a bit, maybe even as much as a Millennium Master. So anyway, let's just jump into it. The first thing I want to get to is the wing servos. Now the book calls for standard servos, or I think it's mini servos, and what they say is, hey, mini servos these days are nice and strong and you can use either one. You can use mini or standard. The problem that I had was, oh, there went a fast airplane. The problem that I had was the mini servos were too short fore and aft. They fit in there fine. They fit in the slot. The problem is you couldn't screw them in on both the front and the back. Obviously the standard servos didn't fit side to side or fore and aft. All right, so that was one problem I had with the build right off the bat, was the servos didn't seem to fit either of the standard size. The servo mounting holes didn't fit either standard size. So it's not a big deal. Get a Dremel tool and just kind of hog it out, and no problem. Off you go. The next thing I didn't like was this and I still don't like the canopy. I'm gonna have to work on this, but it's real. I mean, it pops off way too easy. Like the engagement pin on the canopy, it doesn't come out far enough. So I'm gonna have to work on that. I'll come up with something. I've been thinking about maybe just taking that thing off and using magnets instead. I like magnets. But anyway, yeah, that's a problem, because you have to really make sure that you have a very positive lock before you go flying with this plane, because if you don't, that canopy is coming off. You got to push down pretty hard and you got to pull that pin forward for sure, and you got to make sure that's on there. Okay, the next thing I didn't like, and I don't really think this is a flaw of the airplane per se as much as the person that put the kit together, but in my kit I was missing two back plates for control horns. I did the ailerons first, those, and then I did the elevator and the rudder, and both of those are missing. So I had to go dig through my spares to find control horns that were of the right size and strength to be able to use for the elevator and rudder on this kit. That's just a miss. That's simply a QA problem at Tower, and just a miss on their part. So didn't like that I had to go use my own parts, but these things happen. It's an honest mistake, I guess, and I'll live with it, but not happy that I had to use my own parts. All right, the last issue that I ran into on this plane was underneath. When I did my test fitting, the wing actually fit in the notch and in this back saddle, no problem. It just slid right in there. I could put the screws in and it was great. I took the wing apart to install the spar and epoxy it, and then I had a real problem trying to get the wing in there. So I'm not exactly sure what happened, because my line is very tight. I don't know what happened. I looked at the plug up front to make sure there's no excess epoxy down in that plug. There wasn't. I made sure there was no excess epoxy back on that seam somewhere. There wasn't. So really not sure what happened there. But anyway, a little bit of work, a little bit of persuasion, and I got it to seat in there just fine. And I think over time that balsa will settle a little bit, and I'll probably be able to get it in even further. Okay, so that pretty much rounds out the things I didn't like about this airplane. And it's not a big list, to be honest with you. That wing seating thing, that could have just been my problem. The servo thing, they're off a little bit on that, but it's not hard to correct. If you have a Dremel or a sharp knife, hobby knife, or even a saw or file, pretty easy to correct that. It didn't take me too long. And then the canopy, to me, that's one of the bigger problems on the thing is the canopy, and how that pin just doesn't come out far enough. It should be a very positive latch inside there. So that rounds out the things I didn't like. Now let's get into things I do like about the plane. So the things I like about the plane, first off, everything was square. Everything was true and square. So the wing sat in the fuselage square, and the hole was lined up correctly. The wing bolt hole was lined up correctly. I like the interlocking tail section because that solves issues with left or right for the horizontal stabilizer. You got to make sure that the horizontal is spaced correctly left and right, and it has to also be parallel with the main wing. They did a good job cutting out the saddle, and that rudder interlocks with the horizontal stabilizer, or the fin, the vertical stabilizer, interlocks with the horizontal stabilizer. So that gives you great spacing, perfect spacing side to side, and it does a good job keeping the level correct between the horizontal stabilizer and the wing. So I like that a lot. And then to close out the tail section, they also cut all the material off that you needed for glue. So it really made the assembly very easy. And the hinges were also glued together, or glued in. So when you factor those things together, and I don't mind building stuff. I mean, I have a good time building it. But when you factor those things together, they do some of the menial tasks in building for you. And it really just went together real nice and square. And that's super important if you want a good flying airplane. The next thing I liked was the cowl. Very good cowl. The paint was perfect on it. I did have to cut out some ventilation for my ESC, but you know, no big deal on that. It was fairly easy. I really like the landing gear on this plane. It's stout. It looks really strong. I think it'll get a lot. I'll get a lot of mileage out of the landing gear on this plane. So I'm really happy with how strong that landing gear is. I didn't have any problems with the G-Force 32 motor. That's unusual for tower planes. A lot of times if you don't use a rimfire, you're not going to get the motor on without modifying the firewall. The G32 bolted right up, no problems. And it fit in terms of distance, it fit just fine under the cowl. So I've got nice spacing between my back plate and my cowl. You'll notice that I've got a big prop nut on there and I don't have the spinner. And that's because the prop that I'm using needed a lot of balance on the hub in order to get it to balance, and the spinner doesn't fit over the top of it. I'm also using an 11.7 pitch prop. I think what I'm going to do is keep the 11, but I'm probably going to back the pitch down just a little bit, and that'll make it a little easier for the spinner to fit on there. But anyway, that's not, that's just me goofing around with stuff. That has nothing to do with the build quality or anything else. So I will get a spinner on there, and the spinner did look to fit well for the airplane. The other thing I like about this airplane is the paint, or the monocoat. The monocoat scheme is awesome. It's so good to see up in the air. Really makes it easy to spot it and figure out what's going on in terms of orientation. I mean, it's a 60-inch plane, so that helps too, of course. But as far as the monocoat goes, it's a great color scheme. Very nice graphics, very subtle, but still attractive, and it looks great in the air. I really liked the flight characteristics of the plane. It is a little floaty on landing, but that could just be me learning. I've only had one flight with a plane, so I've got some learning to do. But it's got a real nice, generous wing chord, and it's a 60-inch wingspan on a fairly light plane. So it felt great in the air. I mean, it took off easy. It's got tricycle landing gear, so it's easy to manage on the runway. And in the air, it was just a pleasure to fly. Okay, to round out the build, I'll show you what I did inside. I used as I've mentioned several times, I used the G32 motor. I've got an 80 amp ESC in there, which is plenty of overhead for the 55 amps that I'm pulling on this prop. And I put a video up on the watt test, so look for that on YouTube. And I went ahead and used a 4,000 milliamp hour 5-cell pack, and it balanced perfectly, right on the money. And I will point out that the center of gravity range on this plane is an inch. So it goes something like 2 1/4 to 3 1/4. I split it and went 2 3/4 inches, and it balanced right on the money. So no problems balancing in this configuration with the Turnigy 4000, and that is a 30 to 40C pack, and it's 5-cell. So with that, the ESC fit neatly inside, and I get plenty of airflow for the ESC right through the cowl where I cut the hole. So everything fits nice and tidy, no problems. That's a fairly large battery, and it slides in there without too much challenge at all. Overall, I'd say on the build quality, I would nick them a little bit on the quality control piece, but it's really not a build function. That's just somebody goofed up, and that's not endemic of the airplane or indicative of the airplane. So I'd say on the build quality, I'd give it very high marks. Everything went together well. I had to spend a little time shrink covering, working on the shrink covering with the iron, but that's normal for a tower, and we've talked about that quite a bit. So I give it very high marks for build quality. Everything went together nice and smooth. No major surgery required on this plane at all. A little bit of tweak here and there, but it went together great. And I'll tell you what, I really like the way it flies. I know I've mentioned that a couple of times, but I look forward to spending a lot of time with this plane in the air. So that completes my build review of the Tower Hobbies Sport. I hope the video has been helpful, and if it has, guys, I really appreciate your subscription and your comments and your thumbs up, thumbs down. You know, any interaction you provide with the video helps my material get better placement on YouTube when people search for content that I provide. So, and by the way, if you haven't done it, check out the website. I know it's a fairly new website. There's not a ton of content out there yet, but I'll keep working on it. And the idea is to combine the website with the YouTube channel to make sure we integrate the two and provide both written and video reviews, but with the focus being on the video part. So anyway, take care. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good one. Oh, and Happy New Year.